There's a strange category of actors in Hollywood. You know their face instantly. You've seen them in massive films, watched them stand alongside the biggest stars in the world, and trusted them to carry entire scenes on their own. And yet, somehow, they never quite become untouchable superstars. They exist in a strange space between fame and invisibility. Recognized by everyone, but rarely discussed as the defining faces of their generation. James McAvoy is one of those actors. His career spans billion-dollar franchises, critically acclaimed dramas, and some of the most intense performances of the modern era. He's played heroes, villains, leaders, and monsters. He's carried box office hits and delivered performances that most actors could never replicate. And yet, his career has never followed the path people expected. His rise wasn't clean. His success wasn't constant. And his position in Hollywood has always felt strangely uncertain. James McAvoy was born in Glasgow, Scotland, in 1979, far from the glamour of Hollywood. He grew up in a working-class environment shaped by instability and quiet hardship. His parents separated when he was still a child, and he was raised primarily by his grandparents in Drumchapel, an area far removed from privilege or opportunity. Money was limited. Stability wasn't guaranteed. The future wasn't mapped out. Like many children growing up in similar conditions, survival and practicality mattered more than dreams. As a child, he didn't dream of movie sets or red carpets. At one point, he seriously considered becoming a Catholic priest, imagining a life spent traveling the world as a missionary. Acting wasn't the plan. It was an accident. When he was introduced to theater as a teenager, something shifted. For the first time, he saw a path that felt bigger than the life he'd known. But the path wasn't easy. He didn't have connections. He didn't have financial security. He worked ordinary jobs, including shifts in a bakery, and fought his way into drama school, unsure if it would lead anywhere at all. Like thousands of actors before him, he was stepping into the unknown, with no guarantee that anyone would ever know his name. His early career was quiet. In 2001, he appeared in the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers, surrounded by actors who would go on to become major stars. But McAvoy himself was barely noticed. He was just another face in the background, another young actor hoping someone important would eventually see him. That moment began to arrive in 2004, when he appeared in the British series Shameless. This time, people noticed. Not because he was flashy, but because he was believable. Natural. Real. He didn't feel like an actor trying to perform. He felt like someone simply existing on screen. It was the first signal that he was different. But recognition alone wasn't enough to transform his career overnight. He continued working in smaller films like Inside I'm Dancing and Wimbledon. These roles kept him moving forward, but they didn't make him a star. He was building momentum, but slowly. He was learning how the industry worked. Learning how fragile opportunity could be. Learning that talent alone didn't guarantee visibility. Everything changed in 2005, when he was cast as Mr. Tumnus in the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. The film became a global phenomenon, earning hundreds of millions of dollars and reaching audiences across the world. For many viewers, McAvoy's performance was their first introduction to him, even if they didn't yet know his name. Hollywood noticed. Directors noticed. And suddenly, the opportunities became bigger. In 2006, he starred in The Last King of Scotland alongside Forest Whitaker. The film was intense, disturbing, and unforgettable. McAvoy held his own in a story dominated by one of the most powerful performances of the decade. Critics began to see him as more than just a supporting actor. He wasn't just present. He was essential. Behind the scenes, he was still uncertain. He had not yet reached financial security. He had not yet reached stability. He was rising, but nothing felt guaranteed. Then came 2007. The year everything accelerated. McAvoy starred in Atonement, a film that would change his career forever. His performance was emotional, restrained, and devastating. The film earned massive critical acclaim and introduced him to a much larger audience. For the first time, he wasn't just respected. He was in demand. That momentum exploded in 2008 with the release of Wanted. This was different. This was a full-scale Hollywood blockbuster. Explosive action, global marketing, and massive box office success. McAvoy wasn't hiding in the background anymore. He was leading the film. The movie earned over $300 million worldwide, proving he could carry a major production. It should have been the moment that transformed him into a permanent A-list superstar. But strangely, it didn't fully happen. He didn't chase celebrity. He didn't move aggressively into commercial branding or public image. Instead, he remained selective. Quiet. Focused on the work itself. Instead of becoming locked into one type of role, McAvoy continued moving unpredictably between genres. Then, in 2011, he stepped into one of the most iconic roles in modern cinema. He was cast as a young Professor Charles Xavier in X-Men, First Class. Taking over a character made famous by Patrick Stewart was a massive responsibility. But McAvoy approached the role differently. He didn't try to imitate what came before. He built his own version. Human. Vulnerable. Flawed. And over the next several years, he returned to the role in multiple films, including X-Men, Days of Future Past. These were enormous productions. Massive budgets. Global audiences. By every traditional metric, he had arrived. But even then, he never fully leaned into Hollywood's machinery. He continued performing in theater, returning to the stage in London, choosing artistic fulfillment over constant visibility. He was building longevity instead of chasing peak fame. He wasn't everywhere. He wasn't overexposed. He wasn't predictable. And then, in 2016, everything shifted again. McAvoy starred in Split, playing a character fractured into more than 20 distinct identities. It was one of the most technically demanding performances of the decade. He transformed physically and psychologically, altering his voice, posture, and presence repeatedly within the same film. The performance required complete control. Absolute precision. The film was made on a modest budget, but it exploded at the box office. Audiences were stunned. Critics praised his performance as something rare. Something almost impossible to replicate. It proved he wasn't dependent on franchises. He could carry a film entirely on performance alone. He returned to the role in Glass, completing the trilogy and reinforcing his reputation as one of the most fearless actors working today. Around the same time, his long run as Professor X ended with X-Men, Dark Phoenix. That chapter of his career closed quietly. No dramatic reinvention. No disappearance. Just transition. Behind the scenes, his personal life was also shifting. His marriage to actress Anne-Marie Duff ended after nearly a decade, a private separation handled without scandal or public conflict. He later remarried and became a father again, reshaping his priorities. Fame was no longer the center. Stability was. Family was. In the years that followed, McAvoy continued choosing unpredictability. He returned to television in his Dark Materials, playing the powerful and morally complex Lourdes Real. He returned to theater. He explored voice acting. And eventually, he stepped behind the camera, directing his first feature film, expanding his creative control beyond acting alone. This transition signaled something important. He was no longer just participating in stories. He was beginning to shape them. In 2024, he starred in Speak No Evil, a psychological horror film that reminded audiences once again of his intensity. Nearly 20 years after his breakthrough, he was still leading films. Still commanding attention. Still proving his value in an industry that constantly replaces yesterday's stars with new ones. His career never followed a straight line. It never stayed at a constant peak. Instead, it moved in waves. Rising. Falling. Rising again. Reinventing itself through resilience rather than spectacle. And that's what makes his story different. James McAvoy never became the most famous actor in Hollywood. He never became the most marketed, the most publicized, or the most mythologized. But he achieved something far more difficult. He endured. He built a career based not on hype, but on ability. Not on image, but on performance. In an industry defined by short attention spans and constant replacement, he remained. Always present. Always evolving. Always one performance away from reminding the world exactly who he is.